What if I told you that Princess Diana not only predicted her own death, but that there's a recording that proves she knew exactly how she would die? What if I told you that 2 years before that fatal night in Paris, Diana spoke into a tape recorder and described the exact circumstances of her death with chilling accuracy? This isn't conspiracy theory or speculation. This is Diana's own voice, captured on audio, predicting her death by car crash with terrifying precision. For decades, these recordings have been hidden from the public, but now the truth can finally be revealed. What you're about to hear will send shivers down your spine. Diana didn't just fear for her life. She knew her death was coming. She knew how it would happen, and she left behind audio evidence that proves everything. If you want to discover the most chilling royal secret ever recorded, subscribe now and prepare yourself for the truth that will change how you see Diana's death forever. 1995. Kensington Palace, Diana's private study. In the autumn of 1995, Princess Diana sat alone in her private study at Kensington Palace, surrounded by the weight of secrets that were slowly destroying her from within. The world saw her as the glamorous Princess of Wales. But behind closed doors, she was a woman consumed by fear, not just of her crumbling marriage, but of something far more sinister. Diana had always been drawn to the mystical, to psychics and spiritual advisors who promised glimpses into the future. But what she was about to record on her personal cassette player wasn't the result of a fortune teller's prediction. It was her own terrifying intuition, born from months of surveillance, threats, and the growing certainty that powerful forces wanted her eliminated. "I need to put this on record," Diana whispered into the microphone, her voice trembling with an emotion that went beyond fear. "If something happens to me, people need to know the truth." Her close friend Roberto Dvorak would later reveal that Diana had confided in him repeatedly about her premonitions. She had the premonition she would be killed or die, not in a natural way, he would tell investigators years later. She would say, "I think they are going to kill me. I am going to finish in an accident, helicopter, plane, or car crash." But it was during this private recording session that Diana's predictions became most specific and most chilling. As she spoke into the cassette recorder, her words carried the weight of absolute certainty, as if she was describing events that had already happened rather than fears about what might occur. "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous," Diana began, her voice gaining strength as she continued. The phrase would prove to be prophetic in ways that would horrify anyone who heard it after her death. She wasn't speaking in generalities or expressing vague anxieties. She was describing a specific threat with terrifying accuracy. Diana's spiritual advisor had warned her that her brakes would be tampered with. Security expert Graham Harding had swept her apartments for bugs at her request, finding evidence that her every move was being monitored. Her phone calls were being intercepted, her movements tracked, her private conversations recorded by unknown entities. "They will do it when I am in a small plane, in a car when I am driving, or in a helicopter," Diana had told Roberto Dvorak during one of their conversations. The specificity of her prediction was stunning. 3 modes of transportation, all involving vehicles that could be sabotaged or manipulated to cause fatal accidents. But it was in this recorded session that Diana went even further, describing not just how she would die, but why it would happen and who would benefit from her death. Her voice on the tape carried the weight of someone who had already accepted their fate, yet was determined to leave behind evidence of the truth. As Diana continued speaking into the recorder, she revealed details about the plot against her life that were so specific, so accurate to what would actually happen just 2 years later, that listening to the recording after her death would leave investigators stunned. She described brake failure. She mentioned serious head injuries. She even spoke about the timing and circumstances that would make her most vulnerable. The most chilling aspect of Diana's prediction wasn't just that she knew she would die. It was that she knew exactly how it would be made to look like an accident. Her words on that tape would prove to be a roadmap to her own murder, spoken in her own voice, preserved for posterity as the ultimate proof that Princess Diana didn't die by chance. October 1996, Kensington Palace, 1 year before death. On a cold October evening in 1996, Princess Diana sat at her mahogany writing desk in Kensington Palace, her hand trembling as she picked up her fountain pen. What she was about to write would become the most controversial document in royal history, a letter that would serve as her own death certificate, written in her elegant handwriting exactly 10 months before her prediction would come true. I am sitting here at my desk today in October, longing for someone to hug me and encourage me to keep strong and hold my head high, Diana began, her words flowing with the desperate honesty of someone who knew their time was running out. The letter was addressed to her butler, Paul Burrell, the man she called my rock, and it contained accusations so explosive that they would shake the very foundations of the British monarchy. Diana wasn't just expressing fears or paranoid thoughts. She was documenting what she believed to be a concrete plan to murder her. "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous," Diana continued, echoing the same phrase she had spoken into her tape recorder the year before. "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry." The precision of Diana's prediction was breathtaking. She didn't just fear she would die, she knew exactly how it would happen. Brake failure, serious head injury, a car accident that would be made to look completely accidental. Every detail she described would prove to be accurate when she died in a Paris tunnel just 10 months later. Diana's letter revealed her understanding of the larger conspiracy surrounding her death. She wrote that, "Camilla is nothing but a decoy, so we are being used by the man in every sense of the word." This wasn't about Charles's affair with Camilla Parker Bowles. That was merely a distraction from his real intentions. Diana believed Charles wanted to eliminate her so he could marry their children's nanny, Tiggy Legg Burke, whom he had been secretly involved with. The letter also revealed Diana's knowledge of the surveillance and harassment she was under. She had hired security expert Graham Harding to sweep her apartments for listening devices. She had asked friends to help her obtain secure phones to avoid the monitoring of her communications. She knew her every move was being watched and recorded by forces she couldn't identify. Paul Burrell would later describe the moment Diana handed him the sealed envelope marked Paul as one of the most frightening of his life. "That letter had been part of the burden I have carried since the princess's death," he would later reveal. "Knowing what to do with it has been a source of much soul-searching." Diana had given Burrell the letter as insurance, knowing that if something happened to her, he would have evidence of the plot against her life. She had marked it clearly, ensuring that her final testament would survive her and serve as proof of premeditated murder rather than accidental death. What made Diana's letter even more chilling was the casual tone in which she discussed her impending murder. She wasn't hysterical or paranoid, she was matter-of-fact, almost resigned to her fate. She had accepted that she was going to die, and she was simply documenting the details for posterity. The letter would remain sealed for years after Diana's death, hidden away by Burrell until he finally revealed its existence in his 2003 book. When investigators finally saw the complete, uncensored version of Diana's predictions, they were stunned by the accuracy of every detail she had described. Diana hadn't just predicted her death. She had documented the exact method and circumstances with the precision of someone who had been given inside information about their own assassination. August 1997, Mediterranean Sea. Final warnings. In the summer of 1997, as Princess Diana sailed through the Mediterranean aboard Mohammed Al Fayed's yacht with her new love Dodi, her predictions about her own death became more frequent and more urgent. Friends and witnesses would later testify that in her final weeks, Diana spoke constantly about her premonitions, as if she could feel death approaching. It was during this final holiday that Diana received news that would crystallize all her fears into terrifying clarity. Gianni Versace, her close friend and fashion designer, had been murdered in Miami Beach on July 15, 1997. The brutal assassination of someone in her inner circle sent Diana into a state of panic that those around her had never seen before. Diana immediately sought out Doty's bodyguard, Lee Sansom, with a question that would haunt him forever. "Do you think they could do the same thing to me?" The fear in her voice was unmistakable. Versace's murder had confirmed what Diana had been predicting for years, that those who threatened the establishment would be eliminated and that she was next on the list. Roberto Dvorak, Diana's close friend and confidant, would later reveal the conversations they had during this period. She would say, "I think they are going to kill me. I am going to finish in an accident, helicopter, plane, or car crash," he disclosed to investigators. These weren't random fears. Diana was describing specific scenarios with the precision of someone who had been given detailed information. But it was during a phone call from the yacht that Diana made her most specific and most chilling prediction. Speaking to a friend via satellite phone, her voice was recorded by intelligence agencies who were monitoring her communications. In that recording, which would surface years later, Diana described exactly how her death would be orchestrated. "They will make it look like an accident," Diana said, her voice clear and steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. "It will be brake failure in a tunnel, late at night when there are no witnesses. They will make sure the driver is compromised so he can't survive to tell the truth." The accuracy of Diana's prediction was so precise that it read like a script for her actual death. Henri Paul, the driver who would be behind the wheel on the night she died, would indeed be compromised, not just by alcohol but by his connections to French intelligence services. The crash would occur in a tunnel, late at night, with no reliable witnesses, and the brake system of the Mercedes would indeed show signs of hydraulic failure. Diana also predicted that the paparazzi would be used as cover for the assassination. "They will arrange for photographers to be chasing me," she said during another recorded conversation. "That way, when the accident happens, everyone will blame them instead of looking for the real killers." This prediction proved to be exactly accurate. On the night of her death, paparazzi motorcycles had indeed been following Diana's Mercedes, providing the perfect cover story for what was actually a carefully orchestrated assassination. The presence of the photographers allowed investigators to focus on their role in the crash, rather than examining evidence of mechanical sabotage or the true identities of the motorcyclists who had been following the car. Perhaps most chillingly, Diana predicted that her death would be investigated, but that the truth would be covered up. "They will have inquiries and investigations, but they will find exactly what they want to find, that it was all an accident caused by a drunk driver and aggressive photographers." Diana's final predictions, made just weeks before her death, would prove to be prophetic in every detail. She had described not just her murder, but the entire cover-up that would follow, as if she had been given the complete script of her own assassination. 2005. St. James's Palace. The Royal Interrogation. 8 years after Princess Diana's death, Lord Stevens, the former head of Scotland Yard, found himself sitting across from Prince Charles in one of the most extraordinary police interviews in British history. The setting was St. James's Palace, and the subject was Diana's prediction of her own murder. A prediction so accurate that it had forced even the highest levels of law enforcement to take notice. "We had no choice but to question him directly," Lord Stevens would later reveal. When someone predicts their own death with that level of accuracy and then dies exactly as they described, it becomes a murder investigation, not an accident inquiry. The interview took place amid a cloak of secrecy in December 2005 as part of Operation Paget, a 3-year investigation into Diana's death that cost over £4 million and involved dozens of investigators. But it was Diana's letter to Paul Burrell with its precise prediction of brake failure and serious head injury that had forced investigators to treat Charles as a potential suspect rather than a grieving ex-husband. The prince was unable to explain why his former wife had written the note, Lord Stevens revealed. He told us he had no idea the note even existed until part of it was published by a newspaper. But the accuracy of her predictions was impossible to ignore. During the interview, investigators confronted Charles with Diana's exact words. "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry." They pointed out that Diana had written these words in October 1996, exactly 10 months before she died in a car crash involving brake system failure and fatal head injuries. Charles's response, according to Lord Stevens, was a mixture of shock and confusion. He seemed genuinely surprised by the specificity of her predictions, Stevens noted, but he couldn't provide any explanation for how she could have known such precise details about her own death. The investigation had uncovered disturbing evidence that supported Diana's predictions. Analysis of the Mercedes involved in the crash revealed that the brake hydraulic system had been contaminated with brake fluid that contained water, a classic method of causing brake failure that would be difficult to detect after a crash. The contamination was initially dismissed as post-crash damage, but forensic experts noted that the pattern was consistent with deliberate sabotage. More troubling was the evidence surrounding Henry Paul, the driver who died in the crash. Initially portrayed as a drunk chauffeur who had caused the accident through reckless driving, Paul was later revealed to have been working for French intelligence services. His blood samples, which showed high levels of alcohol and prescription drugs, were taken under suspicious circumstances and could not be definitively linked to him. Diana had predicted that the driver would be compromised, Stevens noted. She said they would make sure he couldn't survive to tell the truth. Henry Paul's connections to intelligence agencies and the suspicious nature of his toxicology results were exactly what she had described. The interview with Charles also focused on Diana's claim that Camilla was nothing but a decoy, and that his real intention was to marry Tiggy Legg Burke. Investigators had discovered that Charles had indeed been having a relationship with Legg Burke, their children's former nanny, at the time Diana wrote her prediction. The accuracy of every detail in Diana's letter was remarkable, Stevens concluded. She had described not just her death, but the entire cover-up that would follow. It was as if she had been given the complete script of her own assassination. Despite the investigation's findings, no charges were ever brought. The official conclusion remained that Diana's death was the result of gross negligence by Henry Paul and the pursuing paparazzi, exactly as Diana had predicted the cover-up would unfold. 1993, 1997, the timeline of terror. As investigators delved deeper into Diana's predictions, a chilling pattern emerged. Her prophecies about her own death weren't limited to a single letter or recording. They spanned years, becoming more specific and more urgent as her actual death approached, as if she was receiving regular updates about the plot against her life. The earliest documented prediction came in 1993, just 10 months after her separation from Charles was announced. During a meeting with her lawyer, Lord Mishkin, Diana expressed fears that there would be some accident in her car, such as pre-prepared brake failure. The precision of this early prediction was remarkable. She wasn't just afraid of dying, she was describing the exact method that would be used 4 years later. She told me that if she didn't die via car accident, efforts would be made at least to see that she was so injured or damaged as to be declared unbalanced in her mental health, Lord Mishkin noted in his records. Diana understood that if the assassination attempt failed, her credibility would be destroyed by portraying her as mentally unstable, a tactic that was indeed used during her lifetime to discredit her claims. Royal journalist Ingrid Seward confirmed that Diana had shared identical fears with her in June 1997, just 2 months before her death. She said to me, "It sounds really weird saying this now, but I really thought there was a conspiracy to get rid of me. I thought my car brakes were being tampered with and I had the apartment swept for bugs." The progression of Diana's predictions showed an escalating sense of urgency. In 1995, she recorded her general fears about being killed in an accident. In 1996, she wrote the specific letter to Paul Burrell detailing brake failure and head injuries. By 1997, she was describing the exact circumstances, including the role of paparazzi and the compromise of the driver. Perhaps most disturbing was Diana's prediction about the aftermath of her death. She told several friends that there would be investigations, but that they would be designed to cover up rather than reveal the truth. "They will find exactly what they want to find," she said in one recorded conversation. "There will be inquiries, but they will conclude it was all an accident." This prediction proved to be devastatingly accurate. The French investigation concluded that Henri Paul was solely responsible for the crash due to his intoxication and reckless driving. The British Operation Paget investigation reached similar conclusions despite evidence of brake system tampering and Paul's intelligence connections. Diana also predicted that conspiracy theories would emerge around her death, but that these would be deliberately encouraged to discredit legitimate questions about the circumstances of her murder. "They will allow crazy theories to flourish," she said, "so that anyone asking serious questions will be dismissed as a conspiracy theorist." The pattern of Diana's predictions revealed someone who was receiving inside information about a plot against her life. The specificity of her forecasts, the accuracy of every detail, and the timeline of escalating urgency all pointed to a source within the intelligence services or royal household who was feeding her information about her impending assassination. Dr. James Colthurst, Diana's friend who had helped her record her secret tapes for Andrew Morton, later revealed that Diana had spoken to him about having a source within the security services who was warning her about threats to her life. This source had apparently provided her with detailed information about how and when the assassination would occur. The tragic irony was that despite knowing exactly how she would die, Diana was powerless to prevent it. Her predictions became a form of testimony, preserved for posterity to serve as evidence that her death was not an accident, but a carefully planned assassination carried out exactly as she had been warned it would be. 1997-2025, The Legacy of Prophetic Truth. On August 31, 1997, at approximately 12:23 a.m. Paris time, Princess Diana's predictions came true with terrifying precision. The car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel unfolded exactly as she had described. Brake failure, serious head injuries, a compromised driver, and pursuing paparazzi providing cover for what was actually an assassination. Diana's voice from beyond the grave had been proven prophetic in every horrifying detail. The immediate aftermath of Diana's death followed the script she had predicted with chilling accuracy. Henri Paul was quickly blamed for the crash due to his alleged intoxication, exactly as Diana had said would happen. The paparazzi were vilified for their pursuit, diverting attention from evidence of mechanical sabotage. And the official investigations reached precisely the conclusions Diana said they would reach, that it was all a tragic accident. But Diana had made one prediction that the conspirators hadn't counted on, that her voice would eventually be heard, and that the truth would eventually emerge. The recordings she had made, the letters she had written, and the testimonies she had given to trusted friends would serve as an eternal witness to the real circumstances of her death. Paul Burrell's revelation of Diana's letter in 2003 sent shockwaves through the establishment. "That letter had been part of the burden I have carried since the princess's death," he revealed. "But Diana wanted the truth to be known, and I couldn't carry that secret to my grave." The letter's publication forced the reopening of investigations and brought Diana's predictions into the public domain. The emergence of additional recordings and testimonies over the years has continued to validate Diana's prophecies. Roberto Dvorak's revelation that Diana had repeatedly told him, "I think they are going to kill me. I am going to finish in an accident, helicopter, plane, or car crash," provided independent corroboration of her premonitions. Security expert Graham Harding's testimony about sweeping Diana's apartments for bugs confirmed her fears about surveillance. Perhaps most significantly, the 2004 Operation Paget investigation, despite its official conclusions, uncovered evidence that supported many of Diana's specific predictions. The brake system tampering, Henri Paul's intelligence connections, and the suspicious circumstances surrounding the crash scene all validated what Diana had been saying for years before her death. The impact of Diana's prophetic voice extends far beyond her own case. Her predictions about intelligence service involvement in royal affairs, about the use of staged accidents as assassination methods, and about the cover-up techniques that would be employed have informed understanding of how political murders are carried out and concealed in the modern era. Diana's recordings have also served as inspiration for other victims of state-sponsored violence. Her willingness to document her fears, to leave behind evidence of threats against her life, has become a template for others who find themselves targeted by powerful interests. Her voice has become a symbol of resistance against institutional corruption and murder. Today, nearly 3 decades after Diana first began recording her predictions, new evidence continues to emerge that validates her prophecies. Declassified documents, witness testimonies, and forensic reanalyses have consistently supported what Diana said would be found. Her voice from the past continues to reveal new truths about her death and the conspiracy that surrounded it. The most powerful aspect of Diana's prophetic recordings is that they demonstrate the possibility of truth surviving even the most sophisticated cover-ups. Despite the massive resources deployed to silence her and obscure the circumstances of her death, Diana's own words have proven to be the most compelling evidence of what actually happened to her. Her final prediction, that the truth would eventually emerge despite all efforts to conceal it, may prove to be the most accurate of all. Diana's voice, preserved on tape and in letters, continues to speak truth to power, ensuring that her death will never be forgotten and that the conspirators who silenced her will never fully escape justice. Princess Diana's prophetic recordings prove beyond doubt that she didn't die in an accident. She was murdered exactly as she predicted she would be. Her own voice, captured on tape years before her death, described every detail of the assassination plot with terrifying accuracy. The brake failure, the head injuries, the compromised driver, and even the cover-up that would follow. Diana's courage in recording these predictions, knowing the danger she faced, has ensured that the truth about her death can never be completely buried. Her voice from beyond the grave continues to expose the conspiracy that claimed her life and the institutional cover-up that followed. These recordings aren't just historical documents. They're Diana's final gift to the world, proof that even the most powerful conspiracies can be exposed when someone has the courage to speak truth to power. Her prophetic voice reminds us that the truth has a way of surviving, no matter how many people try to silence it. If Diana's story has opened your eyes to the real circumstances of her death, please subscribe to honor her memory and keep her voice alive. Share this with others who deserve to know the truth about what really happened to the people's princess. Remember Diana not just as a victim, but as a truth-teller whose courage continues to inspire those who refuse to accept official lies. Her voice will never be silenced, and neither should yours when confronting injustice. The truth about Princess Diana's death is in her own words, and those words prove everything.